right? Should we do both? Like, so how do you guys find this chapter?
It's between easy and moderate. So I guess we could go over the formulae and the concept briefly once, and
Okay.
then the majority of the time we can spend in practicing, because that's what this chapter really needs.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. Okay. Okay. Cool. So I'll be doing that only. We'll like quickly, roughly just go through all the concepts. Like majority is problems. Like this is another physical chemistry chapter. You'll have a lot of numericals. So we'll focus on that part more. Okay. Okay. Start the chapter. Cool. So solutions, starting off with, you guys have already know about solutions. What do you mean by solutions? Like how are solutions formed?
So a solution has like two components to it, the solvent and the solute.
Yes.
Solvent being the component in the majority, and
Yes.
the solute being the one which gets diffused or dissolved into the the solvent, depending on the phase of the solvent, if it's liquid or gaseous. And solute is the
Yes.
component that takes the phase of the solvent. Like if we are mixing solid into liquid, we get a liquid solution.
Yes. Very
So
nice. Hmm.
solvent is the one whose phase is taken by the solute
Hmm.
after dissolving or diffusing into it, and the mixture of both these solute and solvent is called a solution.
Absolutely. And a lot of you have mentioned that it is a mixture of solute solvent. It is a homogeneous mixture. So basically, when you mix solute to solvent, like all the particles are distributed uniformly throughout the solvent. Yeah. So all of whatever you said are absolutely correct. Just add the word, it's a homogeneous mixture in there. Then based on various factors, you have classification of solutions. Um, so based on what the solvent is, you have aqueous solutions and non-aqueous solutions. So quickly just give me some examples. Like what do you mean by an aqueous solution?
Solution and water, like
Absolutely,
alcohol and water
yes.
mixed together.
Yes. Dissolved in water. Solvent is water. Yes, Ananya and Jasleen have mentioned. So you're, as you mentioned, alcohol in water is aqueous, salt solution, sugar solution, all of these are aqueous. And then you have non-aqueous solution. So what do you mean by non-aqueous?
Where the solvent is not water, like if we take again alcohol dissolved in acetone or something,
Yes. Yeah.
then that
Jasleen,
could be a non-aqueous.
definitely. Correct. So Jasleen has mentioned does not dissolve in H2O. If it is, so you can phrase it a little different. So when the solvent is not H2O, then it's a non-aqueous solution. So when you say it does not dissolve in H2O, then you're talking about, okay, solution is not formed. Like in the case of precipitates, or when you mix oil and water, then oil does not dissolve in H2O. Then it's not a solution at all. But a non-aqueous solution is, one in which the um, solvent is not aqueous. So things like organic solvents, as you mentioned, as Aryan mentioned, alcohol in acetone is one. Carbon tetrachloride dissolved in benzene is another. So apart from organic solvents, have you come across any other non-aqueous solutions? I'll give you a hint. It is a solution, like it is related to sodium, like we had studied in S block elements. One of the properties of
Are we talking about
Na2CO3? No, no, we're not talking about that. So there is a characteristic blue color that is given out in a particular solution. Anyone remembers?
In ammonia solution, if you dissolve
Ha.
ammonia.
Yes, ammoniacal solution. So sodium dissolved in ammoniacal solution gives a characteristic blue color. So there, the solvent is ammonia, not water. Yeah. So all these are non-aqueous. And then depending on the number of components that you have, um, you solutions are classified as binary, ternary, quaternary, pentenary, like so on, so on. And these are fairly obvious. Binary is when you have two components, so one solute, one solvent. Uh, Ternary is when you have three components. Now the three components can be either two solutes, one solvent, or two solvents, one solute, anything. And similarly, quaternary is when you have four components, and if you're making a whole salad of it, then you have like other types of solutions also. Then, depending on the physical state of the solutions, you've got different types. So you've got solid and solid solutions, solid and liquid solutions. So alloys are basically solid solutions. Solid in liquid. So when the solute is liquid but the solvent is solid, so you have a solid in a larger quantity and liquid in a smaller quantity. So you've got mercury based alloys. So amalgams are made. So in a zinc you dissolve mercury. Amalgams are basically liquid in solid solutions. Then gas in solid solution, an example is like hydrogen gas, you say dissolved in palladium metal. So you're basically distributing hydrogen molecules or hydrogen atoms uniformly throughout the um, powdered palladium metal. So you're dissolving the gas in solid. And this is usually how catalysts are like reactions that are catalyzed by solid metals. This is how they are prepared. So you've got like either granules or powders of a certain metal. So that's your solid, and then you pass gas through it. So that's basically creating a solution, and then adsorption takes place and the reaction takes place. Then you've got
Ma'am,
liquid.
question.
Yeah, what's up?
For the first solid one where we have alloys, I'm not sure I understand that properly because whenever I mean the existing of a solvent and a solute means that something is dissolving in something, right? And over here, this is less of one dissolving in another and more of them mixing to form another compound completely. I mean, not another compound. Sorry. My bad. But to
Mhm.
form an alloy. So it is more like them merging together than one dissolving in another. So
See,
uh,
like a lot of alloys, it's not an exact 50-50 distribution of the components. Like if you have steel, which is an alloy of iron with carbon, and for stainless steel sometimes nickel is added, chromium is added. So let me just illustrate it, it'll be easier to show you guys what happens. Okay, so the traditional solutions that we talk about, let's say you take a glass, you fill it with water. Okay. And let's say you're adding either salt or sugar particles in it. Let's say, let's take salt solution. So the salt molecules, or the ions, like salt obviously dissociate into ions, and if you add sugar, like the sugar molecules that are there, whatever solute particles that are there, they basically get into the spaces between the particles of the solvent. Okay, so that's why even when you create a solution, the volume is not changing, because the solute particles are occupying the spaces between the solvent particles. This is your traditional, you know solid in liquid solution. Now when you consider something like an alloy, which is basically a solid in solid solution, let me draw it here. I'll use completely different colors here. So let's say this is your block of iron. So how alloys are made is basically both the solid substances are melted, and then they're like mixed together, and then finally it's basically solidified again, right? So the end product, when you have a bunch of, like when you have a block of an alloy, the solvent particle are basically their solids. Now this is not like a true representation. Let's say hypothetically, this is how all of the atoms of iron are arranged. Now the solute particles, like the other component that you're mixing, are occupying the spaces between the solvent particles. So maybe, so like either they can occupy, like depending on which solid it is, depending on the lattice structure formation and all, either they can occupy, instead of iron, beach mein you'll get like the solute particles here. Okay. So the basic point about solutions being formed is that the solute particles are occupying the spaces between the solvent particles. So in this case also, essentially the volume is not changing. So you've got the orange iron atoms, and to a lesser extent you've got the pink either carbon atoms, nickel atoms, like the other things that you are mixing in between. So if you take bronze, it's basically copper and tin.
Understood, man.
Yeah. Okay. So solute particles occupy the spaces in between the solvent particles. That's how solutions are formed. Coming back to this. Yeah. So you've got solid solutions in which the solvent is solid. Then you've got liquid solutions in which the solvent is a liquid state. This is something that you're most familiar with. And in this whole chapter also, as you guys must have already known, this is what we're going to be studying. So when you dissolve solid and liquid, this is like the most commonly known solutions. You've got salt and water, benzoic acid and benzene, iodine and CCl4, all of this stuff. When you mix liquid and liquid, alcohol and water, what else? CCl4 and benzene, all of those solutions. When you're mixing liquid, a gas in liquid, all your fizzy aerated drinks are basically examples of a gas dissolved in liquid. And then you have gaseous solutions in which it's basically a mixture of anything in a gas. So an example is iodine in air, or when you're mixing liquid and gas, chloroform stored under nitrogen. Moisture in air also, like moisture is uniformly distributed in the air. Gas mixtures, basically air is like the biggest mixture of all the gases. These are different types of solutions. The way, like another important property of solutions is the concentrations of solutions. So concentrations of solutions give you a measure of how much solute is there in a particular solvent or a solution, basically defining the strength of a solution, quantified measurement of the strength of a solution. A lot of these you guys have already discussed, like it right from your grade 11. Is there any particular measurement in out of all of these that you guys need a revision of? Otherwise, we'll straight away get to the
Normality, I
study.
guess.
Normality. Okay, we'll go over that. So normality, the way you can understand normality is, one moment. Okay. Normality, which is represented by n. The technical official formula of normality is, you've learned it as number of equivalence or equivalent weight लिखते हैं, ठीक है, upon you can take either, mostly like take volume of solution, right? This is like the definition of it. So you guys know what is molarity, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So molarity is basically number of moles of,
Number of moles of solute by volume of the solution.
yes, by volume of solution. Okay. So when it comes to normality, you so normality is defined for a particular process or a particular reaction. Like you need to know the context of what is happening to be able to measure the normality of a solution. So for example, if you're measuring, let's say, a neutralization reaction, where it's like neutralization of H2SO4. Now, what is the reason that H2SO4, like what provides or what is the cause of the acidic nature of H2SO4?
It releases the H plus and aqueous conditions.
H plus. So that is the reason for its acidity, right? So how many H plus ions does H2SO4 release?
2.
2 H plus, right? So if you have 1 mole of, so this releases 2 H plus. So if you have 1 mole of H2SO4, this is going to give you how many moles of H plus
2
ions?
moles of H plus. 2 moles of H plus.
2 moles of H plus ions, right? So when you're calculating the normality, technically then this would become basically 2 into 1 by whatever. If you have 1 liter, if you have 1 m solution of H2SO4, the normality of it, that particular H2SO4 solution is going to be 2n.
So it's just the amount of H plus that are released into the weight.
Yes. Now that is if the acidic nature of H2SO4 is taken into consideration. But if the reaction that you're performing, the reaction that you're doing depends mostly on sulfate ion, you know, like if sulfate is getting converted to sulfide ions, then in that case you'll have to check how many moles of sulfate ion are taking part in the reaction. So with
Oh, okay. So
respect,
they'll so in the question they'll tell you find the normality of the H plus in the reaction.
no, they won't
Something like that.
specify it like that. When you're asked a question, they'll tell you the process, you know. So 1mH2SO4 is taken for a neutralization reaction. Then in the case of a neutralization reaction, then you know that H plus is the one that is acting, that drives the reaction forward. In that case, you know that you have to take 2 equivalents of that. You need to take 2 into 1m to find the normality in such a case. We'll
So
do
with
examples of
H3PO4,
this.
so normality is 3.
Yes, if
Yeah.
you are considering the like the acidic nature of it. So similarly, if you have a base, if you're taking calcium hydroxide, CaOH twice, and if the reaction is like neutralization, or if the reaction is with respect to the OH minus ions,
Then the normality would be 2.
yes. But if the reaction is with respect to the Ca2 plus ions, then 1m will be equal to 1m here itself.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So normality is basically considered with respect to the equivalence. Iska matlab, like how many parts or like how many moles, or if you know the moles, then you can convert it into weight also. Then you'll get normality in terms of gram per liter. So how many, yeah, basically how many parts are actually taking part in the reaction? That is what normality deals with. ठीक है. So we'll practice some questions abhi. I will not be taking questions from the workbook or your textbook. Actually, before I take that decision, do you guys do the in-text questions as a part of your school work or as a part of your school homework or something like that?
They show us, they solve it in front of us, the
But
in-text questions.
okay, but you would have already solved the in-text questions,
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Then I won't take it here because then that's going to get too repetitive. I'll take it from a different book. And I don't want to take like your workbook questions also right now, because again, when I assign homework, I don't want it to be repetitive. It needs to be fresh when you guys solve it. Okay. We'll start with some easy questions. Concentration related questions, I think you guys will be able to do it. This whole section is pretty easy. All right. So this is question number 1. So if 18 grams of sucrose is dissolved in 162 grams of water. So basically 18 grams of sugar is dissolved in 160 grams of water. Then calculate what is the mass percentage. What is the concentration in terms of mass percentage?
%10.
Oh, done already. So mass percent is pretty direct. Also tell me what is the molarity of this solution. So Abhinav, what percentage did you mention? Did you say 8%?
No, I said 10.
Okay. Cool. I've got 3 answers. Rest of you quickly. Ria has also sent in. Okay. Jinin and Ananya has also sent it. Very good. Awesome. Siddharth, yes. Yes, correct. Why'd you put approximately, Siddharth? Like exact answer to aa jayega. Okay. So the formula, yeah, Ritvik has also sent. So I'm waiting for Javeer. Aryan, have you sent it? No, Aryan has also not sent it.
Ma'am, I'm gonna send both of them together, the molarity and the
Acha.
mass percent.
Okay, cool. Kingshuk. Okay, Javeer has sent mass percent. And Amala. So 3 of you I'm waiting on. For the sake of molarity, you can take the, like, you know, what is the density of water, right?
It's 1 gram per mole.
1 gram per mole?
Sorry, 1 gram per
Per
ml.
centimeter
Sorry, 1
cube.
gram per cell.
So formula for mass percent is mass of solute upon mass of solution into 100. So mass of solute is given as 18 grams. Solution will be solute plus solvent. That's 18 plus 162. Of course, into 100. So that's 18 upon 180 into 100. That'll be equal to 10%. And molarity will be equal to number of moles of solute upon volume of solution. Okay. So first you gotta calculate number of moles of the solute. So solute is sucrose. ठीक है, calculate कर लो please. Aryan has sent in the molarity also. Abhinav has also sent in. I got like wildly different answers from both of you molarity के लिए. Okay, since some time passed, what did you get the number of moles of sucrose as? Jasleen has
0.1.
also sent in 0.1 आया. सुक्रोज का फॉर्मूला क्या लिया?
I just did 1 by 19. I took C12 H22O11, so that's 342 grams per mole.
Yes, 342.
And we are given 18 grams, so I divided 18 by 342 to just give me 1 by 19.
ठीक है, cool.
And
So
then I
that's
divided
like,
it by 0.162.
yeah, so a lot of you have gotten approximately 0.05, yes. And this is divided by 162 cc. That needs to be converted to liters.
Yeah,
You
so
guys do
that
that?
will be 0.162 liters.
0.162 liters, yes. So यहाँ पे conversion will be density is 1 gram per cc. 1 liter will be equal to 1000 cc. So just
So that gives us like 0.162 by 19 in my calculations.
0.162 by 0.162. Because this you have cancelled it as 1 by 19, na?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Let's do that. So you won't get 0.162 by 19. You will get 1 by 19.
1 by 19 by
Into-
0.162.
हाँ,
Oh,
into
okay.
1 by
Okay,
0.162.
Okay, that's where I went.
ठीक है. Cool. So oh, Abhinav has confused glucose and sucrose, इसलिए वहाँ पे difference आया. Okay, Jasmine and Jasleen have sent उनका like it's come very similar. They got the same answer actually. Okay, so only 2 people have sent in so far. Amla has also sent in. Yes, all of them are corroborated. So if I were to just do an approximate check, I get 1000 by, let's make it 20 into 162. 2 ones are 2 by 162 is 150 into 3 is 450. So it'll be, yeah. Hey guys, Jasmine, Jasleen, Amala, yeah, it would, your answer would be correct. Aryan, I think you missed out by a decimal point. Just take a quick check. Otherwise, your answer is like pretty close. The numbers are same, but decimals ka check karna hai. Yes. Javeer, yes, got it. So depending on what values you've taken, how you've approximated it, basically you should get the answer for molarity as somewhere around 0.3 moles per liter. Ria got it, yes. So Ritvik, Jinin, Abhinav, and Kingshuk.
Ma'am, I understand now. With your explanation, I was just a bit confused with volume of solution, but not anymore.
Huh. So given density, yeah, so mass you can convert it into what the volume is. मिल जाएगा. Cool. ठीक है. कर लो calculation. As long as you have understood the problem, do the calculation, practice it. ठीक है. So moving on to the next problem. All right. So in this case, you're given so you have 0.01 grams of urea mixed in 0.3 decimeter cube of water. So you have to find the molality of the solution. Okay, and for reference, the formula of urea is just a second. Before this, Jasmine has asked, but in the volume of solution in liter, why are we taking only 162 and not 162 plus 18? Because volume, see, the 18 grams of sucrose are going to get in the spaces of water. So whatever volume you take will be equal to the volume of the solvent only, of the solution. Okay. Cool. So so formula of urea चाहिए किसी को पता है? Riya has already sent in. So if you know the formula, you can like start calculating. Yeah. So formula of urea is CONH2 taken twice. So it's an organic compound. Like structural formula basically looks like there's a carboxyl group and 2 amine groups on both the sides. Okay. So now find this thing. So molality is basically equal to number of moles of solute by the total mass of solvent or solution. Very
Solvent.
good. Yes. So don't get confused. So all of the other measurements are for taken with respect to the solution, but molality, you take the mass of the solvent here. Okay. So you're given 0.101 grams of urea. तो उसके basis पे find out. And you're given 0.3 decimeter cube of water. So how will you find the mass of water from this? So you have to do two sets
First
of
we convert that
calculations.
to liters. First we do convert that to liter, and
Yes.
then we can do it by density of water.
Yeah.
Density of water is standard, right?
Standard, yes.
Okay.
So do you know the conversion of volume from decimeter cube to liter?
1 decimeter cube is 1 liter.
Yes. And density, once you have it in liter, it's very easy. So you can just say 1 liter is equivalent to 1 kg. This is for water. Siddharth has already sent in. Let me check the solution. Yes, Siddharth. You're off by a decimal point. Yeah. You're off by like one single decimal point. Just check your calculation. But the numerical, the magnitude is right. Jasmine, no. Your answer is not correct, Jasmine. You need to check. Haha. So that, yes, got it. Abhinav, mm, can you convert that into decimals? But I think your answer is right. Looks like it's right. Let me just calculate and check. Yes, Abhinav, your answer is right. Good stuff. Ananya, yes, almost. I think in the final division there is like some difference, but yeah, your answer is very close. Your units such as small m, yes, ठीक है. All right, so we've got the mass of solvent with this conversion. It's pretty much the same, equally only. So number of moles of solute, molar mass of urea कितना आया? So you've got 12 plus oxygen is 16 plus
60 grams, ma'am.
60 grams आ गया. Okay, straightforward. ठीक है. 14 plus 2 into 2, 60. So number of moles will be
I'm
equal
getting
to
the number of moles as like 0.00016 because we're given
0.016.
0.01 gram.
So 1 mole weighs this much. 0.01 moles. Sorry, 0.01 gram है ना? तो yeah. So it'll be 0.01 upon 60, which will be equal to 0. I'll just leave it like this because यहाँ पे decimeter cube के साथ cancel हो सकता है. So I'll see. So molality will be equal to 0.001 by 6 divided by 0.3 will be into 1 by 0.3. That will be equal to, ये decimal point हटा के you get 0.01 upon 18. So once you do this division, you should approximately get 5.5 into 10 raised to the power minus 4 m or moles per kg. Very good. Yes, Javeer also got it. Aryan also got it. Good. So this is the final answer, you guys. It's 5.5 into 10 raised to the power minus 4. Okay. Arya, I have not heard from you also. Send in your answers, no? Arya, following. Okay. Okay. Any doubts in this? Or you just joined? Okay. Because I thought I saw your picture earlier. Anyway. Acha. Okay. So Arya, we've just started solutions. We were working on the concentration of solutions. All this stuff you must be familiar with. We have done it last year also, calculating molality, mole fraction, mass by mass percent, volume by volume percent, all of that. So it's just a basic revision. So one more problem, let's do it. So this is a different way. This is also okay, this is a good one. So let's do this. So you're asked to find, find a volume of 95% sulfuric acid and mass of water that should be taken to prepare 100 centimeter cube of 15% H2SO4 solution. So these are the values you given. So the density of the 95% H2SO4 solution is equal to 1.85 gram per cc, and density of 15%.
Ma'am, the concentration of H2SO4, is it mass by mass or mass by volume?
It is not given here. So you're directly asked, okay, find the volume of 95%.
We're given density, right? We're
They're
given
given density, yes.
1.85 gram per, what's that?
cc.
Okay, so it's mass by
Centimeter
volume
cube.
then.
Yeah. So this is slightly longer. So you need 100 centimeter cube of 15% this solution. Aryan has already sent in his answer. Yes, Aryan, your answer is right. Awesome. Yes. Good stuff, man. Like, you're the first one to answer, and your answer is well correct. Siddharth, so you've sent in volume. And Aryan, you need to check your units. I just saw the values and I said it's the correct answer. But no, according to the units, then it's not. Siddharth, no. If the number you sent, Jinin, you sent in a mass ka value. No, that is close, but not exactly. Jasleen, no, volume is, that is not the thing. Yeah. Aryan, no, it should not be ml in both the places. See the question, you need to find volume of H2SO4 and mass of water. Wait, I'm getting more this thing. Ritvik, no man, like 731 grams nahi hai. Ria, see Ritvik, think about this. If you take 731 grams of water, your volume then itself has become like 731 ml. But you want like only 100 cc, like 100 ml, right? Ria 16.5, no. 16 आ रहा है कुछ लोगों का नहीं, that is not correct. Abhinav, your volume of H2SO4 is not correct. Mass of water also is not correct, but it's quite kind of close. Aryan, yeah, you're the only one who's gotten the correct answer. Ananya, mass of H2SO4, you need to find the volume of H2SO4. So you found the mass of H2SO4. Can you convert that to volume and give me the value?
Ma'am, we have to find the volume of 100% sulfuric acid or 100% or 95% sulfuric acid.
95%
95%.
sulfuric. Yeah.
Okay.
Ria 93.5 now. So this is the final answer, you guys. So just for your reference. So you need to take volume of sulfuric acid. So 95% H2SO4 required is 9.4 ml, and mass of H2O, you should get it as 90.6 grams. So this is the final answer you need to get. Okay, Siddharth has gotten the volume of what? वॉल्यूम ऑफ वाटर तो फिर उसको मास में कन्वर्ट कर सकते हो ना. सो वॉल्यूम टू प्रेप इज 100 centimeter cube. Okay, so this is the final concentration. You want to prepare a 15% H2SO4 solution. You want to prepare 100 centimeter cube of 15% H2SO4 solution. So that, yeah, you also got the right answer. So 9.4 ml should be added to 90.6 ml of water. Yes. Okay. So this is how you make it. So this is the final concentration you need to prepare. So 15% H2SO4 in 100 centimeter cube of the solution. So let's see in the final solution how much of H2SO4 you want and how much of water that needs to be there. So based on that, if you already start with a certain volume, like if you already start with 95% of H2SO4, your H2SO4 you're getting only from this solution. So this will give you the volume of H2SO4 that needs to be added, and then you fill the rest up with water. So that's how you calculate like the mass of water as well. Okay. All right. So how much mass of H2SO4 will you find in 15% of H2SO4? So density is given as 1.1 gram per cc. So total mass of solution will be equal to 1.1 into 100. That will be equal to what? 1110 grams. Aryan, you send 16.5. हाँ, so 110 grams में mass of H2SO4 that you already have is 15% of this. So at 0.15 into 110, you'll get 16.5 grams. So now you already have 16.5 grams of H2SO4. So this is coming from your volume, from your 95% H2SO4. All right. Now if you take, now you're given density of the 95% H2SO4 as 1.85 gram per cc. So if you take 1 cc of 95% H2SO4, this is going to give you 1.85 grams, which means that in order to have 16.5 grams, how many cc's of H2SO4 would you need to take? So this is 95%. Volume of 95% H2SO4 required will be equal to, are you guys following? Calculate kar rahe ho kya? Or is it blank? Because I don't hear anything from you guys.
It's coming up to 8.9 ml.
It's coming up to 8.9 ml. थोड़ा सा difference क्यों आ रहा है? Should get 9.4.
1 second, ma'am. I think I made a mistake.
Yeah, you also did it the same way, yeah?
I did it kind of different. Like the first step is the same. I
Hmm.
uh, calculated the mass of 15% H2SO4, and then in this solution of 15%, I calculated the mass of water.
Acha, you directly calculated.
The mass of water.
Oh, so out of a total of
So
110 grams,
yeah,
16.5 is this thing, so you get mass of water.
yeah,
Okay. Hmm.
calculated the mass of 95% H2SO4 required, which came out to be around 17.37 grams. And then I divided that by the volume. Sorry, to calculate the volume, I did it like density se divide kar diya, so I got 9.4 ml.
Okay. So you got the mass of water as minus 16.5, which is equal to how much is this? Minus 10 is 100. You get 94.5 grams. तो इसमें से 94.5 में से from this you got Aryan, can you repeat what you had done पहले? Hello?
Hello.
हाँ, your voice broke a little पहले.
Oh, okay. Where was I?
So yeah, you calculated the mass of water required in the 15% H2SO4 solution.
Yes, ma'am. So that came out to be around 93.5 grams. Then I
93 होगा, yeah, because 0.5 है ना?
then
Yes.
I calculated the mass of 95% H2SO4 required. So that 100 into 16.5 by 95, and then that gave me around 17.37 grams. Then I divided that by density to give me the volume, which
Okay.
came out to be around 9.4 ml, and then the mass of water. So then I calculated the volume of water, and then density se wo mass aa gaya 90.6 grams.
Cool. So this will basically give you the now this is mass of H2SO4 alone, right? Now the reason why I can't divide this directly is because this 1.85 is both mass of H2SO4 and water both. So this step would be incorrect. That is the mistake that I had done. So till here, you need 16.5 grams of H2SO4 and 93.5 grams of water to prepare this solution. Okay. Then, so once you take 93.5 grams of water, now density of this 95% H2SO4 is 1.85 grams. We won't need that right away because we can't divide these two, as this is density of the whole solution and it's not pure H2SO, pure H2SO4 alone. Okay. All right. So in order to prepare 110 grams of, in order to prepare this solution, 15% H2SO4, you'll need 16.5 grams of H2SO4 and 93.5 grams of water. So now you know the total mass of water that you require, which is 93.5 grams. But you're also getting some amount of water from the solution as well, right? From the 95% H2SO4 solution. So using this, let me take this also off. So once you have the total mass of water that you require, let's see 95% H2SO4 may how much H2SO4 you have and how much water you have. So you need to add the additional mass of water to the already existing 95% H2SO4. Okay, so what is the volume of the solution? Wait, what volume of solution will contain of 95% H2SO4 will contain 16.5 grams of water? Can you calculate that?
Sorry, what, ma'am?
So what volume of 95% H2SO4 will contain 16.5 grams of H2SO4?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically 16.5 grams upon X ml of H2SO4, so the solution should give you 95%, so 0.95. So in this case, X will be equal to
17.37.
17.37 grams. So this is assuming that
Yes, ma'am. 17.37. Same.
17.37, this is assuming that this is mass by mass percent. So out of 17.37 grams, 16.5 grams belongs to H2SO4, so the remaining is water. So once you get the mass, total mass of the 95% H2SO4, from this you can calculate what is the volume of 95% H2SO4 required, and once you get the mass of water that you have, then you will get the additional mass of water to be added. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Got it? Cool. So if you want me to repeat this once again, we'll go over it. अगर समझ में आ गया तो then I'll go to the next problem. Explain after 17.37. Okay, so this is the total. So by using this mass by volume percent to prepare 95% H2SO4, if I have got 16.5 grams, I will need the total mass of the solution to be 17.37 grams. All right, which means that if I take 17.37 grams of 95% H2SO4, उसमें से 16.5 grams I've got H2SO4 alone, and the remaining mass will be of water. So by subtracting these two, you know how much water you already have from 95% H2SO4, which means that in order to need 93.5 grams, you need to subtract the difference of these two. So you'll get somewhere 92 point something is what you're going to get mass of water. Also, now that you know that this is the mass of 95% H2SO4 that you need, you're given the density here. So using the density wala formula, you can find out what is the volume of 95% H2SO4 you need. So you just have to divide 17.37 divided by 1.85 and you'll get the volume of 95% H2SO4 that you require. Okay? Clear? All right. Cool. Okay, we'll do one more. Oh, it's already 4 o'clock, right? We'll do one more based on mole fractions and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay. So you're given that density of 20% mass by mass of aqueous Ki solution is 1.202 gram per milliliter. So find the molarity. The molality, and the mole fraction. Okay. So given density of 20% aqueous Ki solution is 1.202 grams per milliliter. Find the molarity, molality, and the mole fraction. Okay, I'll give it 1-2 minutes. After that, I'll tell you what. Okay, I've already got 2 answers. Abhinav was asking molecular mass of Ki. Potassium, 39. Iodine ka atomic mass is molar mass of iodine, take it to be 127. So 127 plus 39 will be your molar mass. Okay. Aryan has sent in the answers for all 3 parts. I'll just confirm what is the answer. Javeer and Ananya have also sent in their. Ananya has sent molality, okay, and Javeer has sent molarity. Molarity, Aryan and Javeer approximately same hi aaya, and Ananya, yeah, molality you guys also have matched. One moment, molality kya bheja? Yes,
Ma'am, my
huh?
Zoom has bugged out. I will just be coming in a second.
Okay, sure. Aryan, all 3 of your values are correct. Ananya, the answer that you sent is correct. Javeer and Siddharth, you guys are also correct. Your molarity is correct. Good stuff. Siddharth, part B is molality, right? Yes. What are the units? How do you represent molality? Yes, correct. Don't forget units. Javir, you've sent in mole fraction. Yes, approximately correct. So to start with, you're given density is equal to 1.202 gram per ml, and this is for 20% mass by mass. Jasleen, no, you sent in, no, Jasleen, molarity that you sent is not correct. Actually, approximately, yes, I think you're off by 1 decimal point. Siddharth, yes, your mole fraction is also correct. Awesome. Good, good. Ria and Ananya have also sent in. Ananya, your molarity is correct, and Ria, molality is correct. Yes. Awesome. Alright. You just need to slightly work on the speed. That's it. Ria, yes, molarity is correct. So you're given the density. So is, say you know what is the mass of 1 ml of the solution. So compare it, find out what is the mass of 1 liter of the solution. And because it is 20% mass by mass, you will get what is mass of Ki and what is mass of water separately. And once you have the individual masses, you can find the number of moles, and from the number of moles you can easily find the molality, and then the molarity and the mole fraction. You'll get all three of them easily. Okay. Awesome. Do you any of you want me to do it here, or are you guys getting it? So Abhinav, I have not received the answer from you yet. So Abhinav, Amla, Arya, Kingshuk, and Ritvik. I have received answer from Jasleen, but not from Jasmine also. Okay, so this is the direction that you have to go in. Okay. Ananya, yeah, finally mole fraction bhi aa gaya. Cool. So you're given the density, which means that 1 ml weighs 1.202 grams, which means that what is the total mass total of 1 liter of the solution? So 1 liter is basically 1000 ml, right? So if 1 ml is 1.202, this is going to be 1202 grams. Now 20% mass by mass. So you can easily get the mass of the solute, which is Ki upon 1202 is equal to 0.2, क्योंकि 20% है. Jasmine, yes, I got molarity. Yes. Again, Jasmine and Jasleen, you got the same answers. You're off by like 1 decimal point. Amala, yes, got the molality from you. Correct. So isse you will get what is the mass of Ki present. Now this is with respect to 1 liter of solution. So 0.2 into 1202, which is equal to 2404, that is 240.4 grams. So the number of moles, yes, Amla, all three of your values are correct. Molarity, molality, mole fraction of Ki will be equal to Now molar mass is this. So it is 240.4 upon 166. Just do the calculation, you'll get the number of moles. Now this is number of moles of Ki in 1 liter directly. So that is basically going to be your molarity that you get directly. So 240.4 divided by 166, I get it's approximately equal to 1.45 moles. So this itself is going to be your molarity, because all your values I've taken with reference to 1 liter. So now that I have mass of Ki, molality, I need number of moles of Ki upon mass of the solvent. So you know the total mass, you know the mass of Ki. So say you'll get the mass of solvent. Convert that into kgs and you'll get the molality also. And finally, mole fraction is number of, like, you know, the number of moles of Ki divided by the total number of moles of water that you will get when you calculate mass of solvent for molality. Divide them and you'll get the mole fraction. Okay. Okay. Cool. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll be moving forward then. So we'll go to the next topic, which is going to be all about solubilities. So what do you mean by solubility?
So it's like the ability of a substance to diffuse into another substance, like the capability of a solute to dissolve into a solvent. Like if you have a
Kind
particular
of.
amount of solvent, so the maximum amount of solute
Uh,
that you can dissolve into that solvent is the solubility of that solvent.
Yes. So
Solute, sorry, yeah.
yeah. So solubility is the maximum amount of solute that dissolves in a solvent. So solubility is always defined at a particular temperature. So even, you know, if you're asked to define solubility, mention at a particular temperature. So maximum amount of solute can be dissolved in the solvent. So when you dissolve like a solute in a solvent, like if you take a solid and put it in a liquid, so the first thing that happens is that the solute is going to like this process of dissolving, the process of settling into the spaces between the solvent particles. So that is called dissolution. Okay. So when dissolution is happening, the concentration of the solute is increasing. Okay. So as long as you keep on adding the solute, so the dissolution process keeps happening, like keeps increasing, and the concentration keeps on increasing. Now this will happen till a particular point. So again, all of these are particles, right? These are atoms and molecules. So they keep moving within whatever space they're in. So in the process of moving, sometimes what happens is the solute particles, they start collecting together and then they start separating out from the total solution itself. So this process is called crystallization. Okay. So this is how your crystals are purified. Like you prepare a saturated solution. So saturated solution is when the maximum amount of solute is dissolved in the solvent. So once all of the spaces between the solvent particles are filled out, so that is the solution is like saturated, if you keep adding more amount of solute, the new solute may dissolve into the solution, but because there is not enough space, some of the other particles of the solute will get out of the solution and you know, like they basically separate from the solvent particles. So what is happening is when a solution is saturated, there is dissolution is also happening, taking place. Crystallization is also taking place, which means, so there will be a certain point, depending on the temperature of factors of temperature and pressure, there will be a certain point when the rate of dissolution is equal to the rate of crystallization. So when a forward process is equal to a reverse process, then what is that phenomenon called? Like what can you call that? What is happening there?
Equilibrium.
Equilibrium, absolutely. Yeah. So this particular process, like when you're adding a solute to a solvent, forming the solution, but once that maximum limit has reached, like as you add more solute, the reverse process is going to take place. So yeah, when the rate of forward is equal to the rate of backward, there is a dynamic equilibrium that is established. Okay. So this is basically what happens when you dissolve a solid or even a gas in a liquid. Now the solubility is the maximum amount of solid that can be dissolved in a liquid. So the factors affecting solubility, so let's look at temperature first. What do you guys think will happen to the solubility when you increase the temperature?
It'll increase.
Increase. Ritvik is also saying increases. Anybody who thinks otherwise? So, okay, Jasleen is also saying increases. So intuitively, you think it increases. It will depend on the enthalpy of change. So, okay. So if the dissolution process is endothermic, if it takes energy, then as you increase the temperature, then there'll be increase in the solubility. But if the dissolution process is exothermic, then when you increase the temperature, the solubility will in fact decreases. So what is this principle based on? Any of you remember?
Le Chatelier's principle.
Yes, Le Chatelier's principle. Okay. Then coming to the effect of pressure, what do you think? How do you think pressure will affect dissolution of a solid in liquid? So as pressure increases, what will happen to the solubility? Okay. Aryan has sent an answer. We've got only one answer here. So you need to keep in mind what is the physical state of the solute and the solvent here. Will like, so the physical state of the solute is solid. Does a change in pressure affect solids so much? Does it affect their volume or does it affect anything? Like, no, solids are incompressible. Like it's not going to affect their mass, it's not going to affect their volume, nothing, right? Liquids also, does increasing or decreasing the pressure affect liquids? Like if I have bottle of water, if I try to put pressure on it, pressure doesn't affect. So will it affect solubility at all? Like if it doesn't affect any of the components? No. So there, as solids and liquids are highly incompressible, so pressure has minimal effect on it. So now let's look at a solubility in gas. Solubility in gas, again, so in the case of solids, solubility is measured in terms of their mass. So the maximum amount, matlab the maximum mass of the solute that can be dissolved in a particular either mass or volume of the solvent at a particular temperature. In the case of gases, you measure it in terms of volume. So the maximum volume of a gas that can be dissolved in a particular volume of the solvent at at a given temperature at a standard like atmosphere, 1 atmosphere pressure. Okay. So now considering we are dealing with gases, oh, another factor that affects solubility of solids I'd forgotten to discuss is the nature of the solute and the solvent as well. Can you tell me, like, what is the principle that decides the solubility of solids and liquids? So there is a particular statement that is used to describe this phenomenon. Have you guys heard of like dissolves like?
Ma'am, that was more relatable to colloidal solutions, right?
Colloidal solutions, also your regular normal true solutions also. Okay, so like dissolves like ka matlab, this is applicable over the board whenever you're talking about dissolution or mixing in general. So polar solvents will dissolve polar solutes, non-polar solvents will dissolve non-polar solutes, which is why your ionic compounds are soluble in water, because water is polar. And of course, like alcohol, acetone, CCl4 are soluble in organic solvents because all of them are non-polar. Okay. Is sugar a polar or a non-polar molecule? This is a very, like, it's a very common doubt that a lot of people would get. I just wanted to see, I want to see if you guys have thought of it or not. So is sugar polar or non-polar? Yes, Ria and Aryan have answered. Yeah, that sugar is a polar molecule. So that is the reason it is dissolving in water, right? But do you think sugar is sugar conducts electricity? If you have sugar water, does that conduct electricity? No idea. Yeah, Jasleen has mentioned, no, sugar water does not conduct electricity. It doesn't. So then what is the, like, how do you decide if something is polar? How do you make sense of it? Jinen has touched upon the correct thing. So conduction happens if the solute is ionic, if it's an ionic compound, correct? And polarity is only dependent on, as Jinin has mentioned, if there's like a high charge differential, like if there's a concentration of negative charge, the electron clouds on one side of the molecule, if it's asymmetrical, then you have polar molecules. You find this in like really bulky molecules like sugar, like C12H22O11. Yeah. And yeah, things like NaCl, if you have ionic compounds, they straight out produce ions itself. So this is like a really important distinction to keep in mind. Electrolytes are different from polar, like something conducting electricity is different from polar versus non-polar properties. So all electrolytes can be put under polar substances because they clearly have two poles, positive and negative poles. But but there are some polar substances that are non-electrolytes. So they're polar because of the charge differential. They're attracted to parts of the water molecule. Yeah, but sugar is a non-electrolyte. So it does not conduct electricity at all. Yeah, as Ria said, sugar is polar, but it is not an electrolyte. It falls under non-electrolytes. And if it is non-polar, like obviously, like if there is no charge differential at all, non-polar substances are completely, they are not going to conduct electricity at all. But it's important to keep in mind that there is a difference between electrolytes and polar, non-polar substances. Okay. All right. So yeah, so nature of solute solvent also decides the solubility of a substance. So polar substances are generally soluble in water. Non-polar are not soluble in water. Again. Then factors affecting solubility of gas and liquid. Again, nature of the gas and nature of the liquid also affects the solubility of gas and liquid. Similar to solids, like polar substances do dissolve in water. So that is why you have HCl dissolving in water easily. You have ammonia dissolving in water easily. But gases like oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, carbon dioxide are not very soluble. Like, yeah, you do have dissolved oxygen, but the extent of solubility is not very high. And then coming to effect of temperature, how do you think the temperature affects the solubility of gases? What is the effect of temperature on gases? Come on, guys. Like if you don't know, at least answer.
I'm confused. I'm confused. Like, see, when we are increasing the temperature, obviously the kinetic energy of the gas molecules is gonna increase. But will that lead to faster diffusion, or will it lead to lesser diffusion due to more movement? That's where I'm confused.
Ah,
I think it won't have a significant difference.
no, it will, Abhinav. So in the case of, like if we're talking about gases that are already high on movement of their particles, right? They already have high kinetic energies. Now, when you're increasing the temperature, you're further increasing their extent of motion. So their solubility will decrease. So that movement that Aryan you spoke about, so that will lead to the molecules moving away or out of the liquid itself. So as temperature increases, the solubility decreases.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So in solids, it depends very much on which solid you're considering. But in gases, this is like a across the board. Majority of the gases, usually as the temperature increases, the solubility decreases. Okay. And this is evident in a lot of cases. Like all of you must have had sodas, right? Like your Coke, your fizzy drinks, Sprite, Coke, Thumbs Up, all of these. Yeah. When you keep a bottle of Coke outside for a long time, do you observe, like what do you observe? Does the fizziness remain as it is, or does it increase, or does it decrease?
No, ma'am, it decreases.
Decreases,
Like
right?
if you keep it out over a couple of weeks, if you haven't consumed it, then
Not
it
even
decreases.
weeks, man. Like keep it over, like you just pour a glass and maybe you drink it slowly. You didn't drink it immediately. Even if you keep it for like 1 hour outside, it loses a lot of its fizziness.
Oh, okay.
Tastes
You
like
mean
flat.
outside the bottle? Okay.
Yeah,
You mean
like
outside the
outside the
bottle?
refrigerator, outside on the table, at room temperature. Yeah. Like again, within the bottle, it creates an anomaly because bottles are usually sealed, right? So even if you leave it outside, like the gas has nowhere else to go, it has to be like in the liquid. Which brings us to our next point. What do you think is the effect of pressure on the solubility of gas and liquid?
I think it increases with increase in pressure.
Yes.
Because like keeping in mind the example you just gave us, there the
Definitely.
pressure is equivalent to atmospheric pressure and the gas just diffuses out. So yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, Jasmine have also mentioned it is directly proportional. So when you increase the pressure, you're basically, so when you increase the pressure, there is decrease in volume, right? So when there is decrease in volume, you're not leaving a lot of options for the gas molecules. Like they don't have an option but to move inside the liquid. So basically, they don't have an option but to dissolve in the liquid that is there or the solvent that is there. So as you increase the pressure, the solubility also increases. It's directly proportional. And studies of relation of pressure with solubility was done by Mr. Henry, who has again given his own law. So this basically quantifies how pressure affects solubility. Okay, so this is the quantitative relationship between solubility and partial pressure of a gas. He says at a constant temperature, like as long as you keep the temperature constant, the solubility of a gas in a liquid is directly proportional to the partial pressure of a gas present above the surface of the liquid or solution. Okay. So again, when you're talking about gases, now they don't have a fixed volume as such, right? So whatever quantification with respect to the amount of gas or the property of a gas you can make, you can talk about it in terms of their partial pressure, which of course relates to their mole fraction also. But yeah, so he's saying the same thing that we had deduced, that solubility is directly proportional to the partial pressure of the gas. So if you had to express it mathematically, of course, solubility, I had mentioned that one way of measuring the solubility of a gas was volume of the gas is to the volume of the solution. Another way to figure out the concentration is by relating it with the mole fraction also. So you can, because you're taking it at a particular temperature, at a particular overall pressure conditions, you convert the pressure into the number of moles. So what Henry had mentioned is the mole fraction of the gas in the solution was directly proportional to the partial pressure of the gas that is present just above the solution, like in the vapor phase. So it looks like X, but this is the Greek letter chi, CHI, is directly proportional to P, which is the partial pressure. You introduce a constant of proportionality, and just rearranging the equation, you get the formula P, which is the partial pressure of a gas that is present just above the solution, is equal to Kh into X, or chi, which is the mole fraction of the gas in the solution. And Kh is called Henry's law constant because it's derived from Henry's law. So based on this mathematical expression, what can you say about the units of Kh? Yes. Hello. So what are the units of Kh?
Bar per mole.
Why per mole? Okay, so P is equal to Kh into X, which is the mole fraction, right? Now, what is the unit of partial pressure?
No, only bar.
Bar. And unit of mole fraction, it's a fraction, right? Uska koi unit nahi hai. So Kh also will take on the unit of pressure to keep this equation equal. So units of Kh is in terms of pressure. Like it can be bar, it can be atmosphere. Yeah. It can be kilobar. Okay. Next, like for every law, this is like usually the case where you have a statement of the law, and then you have the mathematical expression for it, and based on that you also have a graph for it. So you've seen that in surface chemistry also. You'll be seeing that multiple times for this also. So drawing the graph of Henry's law, so the variables here are obviously the partial pressure and the mole fraction. Now, what would be the graph drawn between partial pressure and mole fraction based on this equation?
I think a straight line.
Yeah, Ananya has also mentioned, yes. Straight line, if you had to be more specific, it is a straight line passing through the origin. So it's of the form y equal to m into x. So yeah, it's a straight line passing through the origin, which makes sense, right? Like if you had, if the partial pressure is 0, like if that gas is not extending any pressure on the surface of the liquid, then mole fraction of the dissolved gas will also be 0. Like you won't find that gas dissolved in the liquid, in the solvent. Okay. So it's a straight line passing through the origin, and the slope of the line, so that is y upon x, so partial pressure upon mole fraction, gives you the kh, which is Henry's law constant. Okay. It's almost 4:50. Okay. Apart from this, there are some applications of Henry law constant. Before that, let's talk about the significance. Yeah, shape is straight line passing through the origin. So another thing is that Henry's, so Aryan, you got locked out. Okay, so I was just discussing Henry's law constant only. We discussed what is the graph, what does the slope give of the graph, about this only. Okay, so for a particular pressure, so Henry's law constant is it does not depend on the partial pressure, it does not depend on the mole fraction. It is a characteristic of the nature of the gases. So for a particular pressure, different gases will have different kh values, which makes sense, right? Because if Henry's law constant is kind of an indicator of the solubility of a gas, different gases will have different solubilities, right? Because it depends on their polarity, like their basic nature of the gas itself. So kh is like a quantitative value of the nature of gas that gives you its solubility. Okay. Limitations of Henry's law. Again, the law is applicable at low pressures. It is not applicable at extremely high pressures or extremely low temperatures. So so this should be, it's not it is valid if the temperature is not too low. So obviously at extreme pressure and temperature conditions, it starts affecting the phase of the gas itself. And there are other properties that start changing at, high pressures and low temperatures. So Henry's law is not applicable. The gas should not be highly soluble. It should not react chemically, and it should not like associate or dissociate in the solvent. So obviously, if there's like if the gas is dissociating into ions, or if it's like associating with the solvent particles, or if there's like a chemical change taking place, that is going to affect the one mole fraction within the solution itself. That's also going to affect the partial pressure. So you'll have to take into account the reaction kinetics also in that case. So Henry's law as it is it's not going to be applicable. So these are some of the limitations. But for practical purposes, for your normal gases like oxygen, CO2, and all of the basic gases, and applications at room temperature, whatever you're doing, Abhi, Henry's law is like very applicable. And Applications of Henry's law. So there are some applications given, this you guys can learn. One is fizzy drinks that we have already studied about. So increase the solubility of CO2. The packaging of the bottles or the cans is done in high pressure situations. So it's sealed under a higher pressure, which is why when you crack open the can or when you open the bottle, some gas like fizzes out, because when you're opening it, the pressure essentially becomes equal to the atmospheric pressure, slightly decreasing. So the solubility also slightly decreases. Then another application is in the case of deep sea diving. So scuba divers, they have to cope with the higher concentration of dissolved gases when they're breathing air at high pressure cases underwater. Now, when they dive deep and then they surface up, like they come back to the surface, there is a pressure differential, right? So that is going to affect the solubility of gases in the blood. So that basically leads to formation of nitrogen bubbles in the blood. So that is obviously going to affect your health. So there's a term given which is called decompression sickness. Okay. And another application of Henry's law is in the case of higher altitudes. So again, like the opposite of deep sea diving on the other end. So when you like, have you ever traveled to Ladakh or Leh, or have you ever done mountain climbing? Have you trekked up in the Himalayas? Any of you? No? Okay. So next time you go on a trip, right? Like sometime during the holidays or maybe after your 12th, if, or actually, yeah, considering the situation, when this opens up in the far future, when you go out on a trip. Oh, Aryan has gone to Bhutan, 10,000 feet. Cool. So you must have experienced this then. So at like really high altitudes, uh, is there an increase or decrease in the pressure, like in atmospheric pressure? So there is a decrease in the pressure, right? Ananya has also mentioned she's done the tiger nest trek in Bhutan. Cool, nice. So at higher altitude, there is decrease in pressure, and because of that, a lot of people experience something called altitude sickness. So this happens in the case of, like if at all you take a flight to Ladakh or Leh, the sudden difference in pressure, like it makes a lot of people sick. And that's the reason, even when people go trekking Mount Everest or like any of the mountains in the Himalayas, it's usually like a 7 to 10 day trek. They have to gradually get acclimatized to the altitude. Otherwise, there's a lot of nausea. You start feeling pukish. Now, the reason for altitude sickness is that, oh, Aryan saying makes his ears hurt in an airplane. Now, that is not the sickness we are talking about. That's like high pressure thing. And there is like liquid in your ears to maintain balance. So applying a high pressure on your eardrums, like that does something in your ears, which makes your ears hurt. But the altitude sickness is caused because of the lower pressure. Now, when the pressure is low, solubility of oxygen also decreases compared to at ground level or at sea level. So because of the lower solubility of oxygen, you don't take in enough oxygen. So that leads to, your nausea, headaches, and all the symptoms of altitude sickness. Yeah. So this is all the theory about solubility of gases. So in this section, you'll be asked numericals and questions mainly based on Henry's law. Okay, so formula for Henry's law is just this, straightforward. partial pressure of a particular gas is equal to Henry's law constant of that gas into the mole fraction.